from London, BBC World News.
Hello, I'm David Eads with BBC World News. Our top stories. President Putin addresses the nation and focuses on a faltering economy. He warns Russians of tough times ahead. More radical tension in the United States after the decision not to charge a white police officer over the death of a black man he restrained with a chokehold. And also in the programme, could Zimbabwe's powerful First Lady, Grace Mugabe, succeed her husband Robert as president? Well, thanks for joining us. Got one or two problems with our technical department there, but let's focus on our main story. Russian President Vladimir Putin has used his annual State of the Nation address to attack the West for what he described as its hypocritical attitude over the conflict in Ukraine. Now, the president said that he was certain that if Ukraine hadn't experienced a political crisis, well, the West would have come up with another excuse to contain Russian power. Russia's economy has been hurt by Western sanctions over the country's role in the confrontation in Ukraine, also by the fall in oil prices. And Mr. Putin said that events in Ukraine were simply an excuse to impose sanctions on Russia. Well, our correspondent in Moscow, Sarah Rainsford, has been following the speech. She gave me her reaction to what he had to say. Now, as feared, we can't bring you that at the moment, so we will come back to that if we can a little bit later in the programme. The situation facing Mr. Putin, a challenging effort in terms of trying to work out how to bolster Russia's economy. Now, he has talked about a 3 to 4 year process in which Russia needs to rediscover some sense of growth. There's 3 to 4 years of what would be very hard times, it would seem, for the Russian people. As I said, probably the most important element of his State of the Nation speech was ways in which he was laying out, very much for a domestic audience, how that could be achieved. He did also demand of the central bank that they must bring an end to the speculation over the ruble. But as I said, let's just catch up on Sarah Rainsford's take on the president's speech. Well, you're just not going to get it today. I think that's the way it feels like at the moment. Nonetheless, we are going to take into account the business ramifications of what have been said. Aaron is going to join me in just a second as he sneaks across the set, and we cope with the one or two little technical hitches we've had here. But it's an important time, not least because in the course of the speech itself, as it started, we were aware that the ruble was falling. That's as President Putin started to speak. And indeed, as I know that Aaron will be able to vouchsafe, during the course of that speech, we're getting there eventually, Aaron,
sorry,
the ruble started to rise again. So yeah, clearly, I mean, that is pivotal, isn't it? The ruble, whether it's responding to oil or the economy, whatever it is, it's a ruble.
The oil prices have tanked. I was going to say the ruble has tanked. I mean, it is down something like 40% against the dollar so far this year, around 60% against the euro, and it is making things very complicated. Also, a couple of days ago, we heard from, it was the first acknowledgement coming from the government, the Russian government, from the finance minister saying, hands up, the Russian economy will likely to slip into recession next year. They were expecting a growth number next year of about 1.2% positive, but they've sort of said, no, look, it's going to go down to 0.8%.
It's all over the place.
It is all over the place, like the cameras in this studio, isn't it? God, love these robotic cameras, David. But look, when he was talking, when President Putin was talking, there was kind of and it is President Putin, isn't it, a defiant stance, really, and certainly on the economy, to the point where, and this is where a lot of us sort of went, what? To the point where he was almost saying the sanctions imposed against Russia could be a blessing in disguise. I mean, he said it'll make Russia stronger, it'll make Russia much more self-reliant, if you will.
It need to be a stimulus, he was saying, wasn't he?
Yeah,
in terms of sort of national desire to get on and do stuff.
Exactly. And there were some other measures. There were certain measures that he announced. One was a tax-free, so no tax increases. But one other interesting point, I found it interesting, is they're putting an amnesty on capital coming back in. So basically money that has been taken out of Russia, whether it had been through illegal means or to avoid taxation payments in Russia. So that money left. He's saying, bring that money back now, put it into our banks here, and we'll turn a blind eye. No questions asked, almost. So, and the idea behind that is if you've got more money coming back in, sitting in the banks, it should hopefully support the ruble. That's what they don't want to see. They're trying to put a halt to the decline in that particular currency. So it's all been, there's a lot on the plate, a lot on the plate.
And a lot of pressure on the central bank as well, being told you've got to stabilise the ruble. You can look at things like repatriating money or getting money back into Russia. Whether that works or not is anyone's guess. I wouldn't have thought there'd be that many who are going to say, oh, OK, let's take our barrel loads of cash back into Russia at the moment. But the central bank can only do so much, presumably.
Well, they're going to go too much. They can only do so much. Also, when you've got these external factors that really, they don't have too much control about you. They don't really have that much control over the falling oil prices. So those oil prices have been plummeting, as we know, off down about 32, 31% from the peak in summer. And I always love this little interesting tidbit here, that for every $1 drop or fall in the price of a barrel of oil, Russia loses $2 billion of revenue. So, I mean, they've lost, I think so far, they're saying this year, they've lost about $140 billion out of the economy because of the falling oil prices. Not much they can do. They could try to cut production, but unless everybody else is around the world, then the other oil producers, it's going to be very difficult.
Massive challenge, isn't it, for the Russians? Aaron, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, David. Thank you.
We could all listen to Aaron all day, but given the technical issues we're having at the moment, what we're going to do instead is take a break here and bring you an edition of Hard Talk. So stay with us here on BBC World News.
Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sackur.